computer, yeah. So the main part of our workshop will be led by Dr. Levy. He will share practical strategies and facilitate a Q&A discussion. So, well, oh yeah, we have received some questions already through our survey. So we will make sure to address them. So, let's kick start it. Uri, wanted to get started?
Sure. Yeah, good evening, everyone. This is actually morning in Indonesia. It's 6:30 in the morning, but I'm really excited to see you all. So I will just give you 5-minute review on what is Gateway from the student's perspective. This is actually based on my experience during Gateway, because when you go to the graduate school, not everybody knows what they are doing. For example, like myself, I didn't know what I'm doing. So that's why when I have those milestones, it's really helped me to plan and to focus on what to do next. Because if, you know, in some other program, you just go by your own, but in this program, you have some sort of milestones and what to follow to basically finish your graduate school as soon as possible, even though that's not my case. But this is, I just actually summarize what the video gives you, like what is Gateway. For my perspective, it's actually a literature review paper that you submit after taking 12 credits. Why 12 credits? Because during that time, it was assumed that you know what you are doing, you know what you want to learn more, and you know what you want to dig further. And then usually you should submit it in the third semester, 6 weeks before the exam week. So if you submit it more than that, usually it will not be reviewed at the same semester, because during those time, many professors, your committees also have other things to do. And what is the component of it? Usually it is problem statement, theoretical framework, preliminary review of literature, and future directions. This framework is actually used to let you think what you want to do for your pilot and for your dissertations. Not everybody have the same topic during Gateway, pilot, and dissertations, but for me, myself, I have exactly the same topic because it is easier for me to follow. And then during that time, you can also think who is my, participant, who I want to recruit it. So you actually have some time to prepare that. And then this is the last slide from me. What is the tips that I did during my Gateway? To be honest with you, it was really fast for me to do my Gateway. It just take me like, I think for weeks, because most of the time I just revising my previous paper. So after the 12 credit, this is what I did. I communicate to my advisor right away. I show her, this is the paper I wanna basically revise to be a Gateway. This is the topic I want to pursue. And then I will ask her, what do you want me to edit, or what do you want me to add? Usually my advisor give me a lot of questions to think of. And what I did was I showed the next draft periodically. During those 4 weeks finishing my Gateway, I actually met my advisor 4 times. And my Gateway was revised 6 times because I do revisions before I met her. And then lastly, keep talking about your work. Because if you keep talking about your work, many people give you feedback to think of. I personally present my Gateway in any occasions I can got at that time. I even went to the I think it is School of Education's showcase, something like that. I make a poster, I present it. From there, I get a lot of feedback. And then it was actually leading me to my pilot and now my dissertations. So that's what I do and what I did at that time. And that's all from me. And if you have any question, you can keep it. Dr. Levy will add more information about Gateway. This is only the overview from the video and the transcript that Gina made for you all, guys. Thank you. Tell me.
Thank you so much, Uri. Any questions to her? if not, maybe we can talk about it later. So
I have a question, Worry. I'm wondering about the feedback that you got that was helpful. I think it's really cool, and I want to encourage everybody to be in conversation about your work informally outside of class if you can, because the more you talk about your work with others, I mean, usually, not always, but I'll just say it can be helpful to have conversations with people and verbalize things. This happens to me, and I'm like, at a very different phase from where you are, but I still benefit from just talking to people about it. And sometimes as I'm verbalizing things, I'll say something or someone will say something back to me that will just simplify it or reframe it or remind me of something that I need to write in order to link idea 1 to idea 2, or maybe I didn't explain the connection between idea A and idea B and why idea A leads to idea B. And because someone asked me a question, it's like, that's why someone's saying my writing is confusing, because I'm not really connecting these things, even though they're connected in my head. So sometimes having conversations about your work and presenting it like in a poster, the way Rory was talking about doing, is a good idea if you can do it.
And also when you meet other graduate students, sometimes you just talk about your works. Everybody mostly are in the same phase, but sometimes your friends read an article and then they were like, I think Woody might know, might like this article. And then they just send me email. That was, it was happening a lot of time when I was in my first and second years, because all of my classmates just randomly send me email. Have you ever read about this article? Have you ever think about this line of questioning? Or have you ever think about this theoretical framework? I think if you cannot explain your ideas through this framework, you can try to this framework. So those kind of things happen a lot. That's what helped me actually finish my pilot and proposal faster, because people keep sending me those things. So I think that's also other benefits.
Yeah, so you could do that, formally through a poster or presentation, but you could also do it informally by going out for coffee with somebody and just doctoral work can be a little bit isolating, because you're really focused on your own problem, and it becomes more isolating as you get further along, because your problem is really your very unique problem space. For a dissertation topic to be a dissertation topic, it should be original. So how do you be in conversation with someone? How can you be in conversation with someone when you have all this background knowledge about this thing that the person that you were in class with a couple of years ago doesn't have background knowledge on? Well, in the process of explaining it, and being a good, you can be a good listener for somebody else, and somebody else can be a good listener for you. And you can talk to each other and learn a lot, learn about the field, learn about something that's, an idea, a set of research that's adjacent to yours. It's going to be in education, at least, it's not going to be in chemistry. Or sometimes we get so narrow, we kind of forget we're all basically after the same thing, student learning in general, but we're not in, but so you get to learn something that you may be able to use later, in your profession. You don't know exactly what you're going to do after you're done with this. So it can actually be really helpful to be in conversation, if not in that particular moment, somewhere down the line. And in that particular moment, though, also you can listen to somebody's logical train and their experience, and you can learn from that. She went to the library at that point, or she asked her advisor at that point, or she did her IRB at that point, or decided to switch from quantitative methods to qualitative methods at that point, and it made sense for this reason. And those kinds of stories can actually help you. So I know we're getting a little bit away from the gateway because that's where Rory is, but I want to just kind of project forward. The gateway is the foundation for your scholarship, but at the end, that future research directions thing, that's where you're going next, and I know Gina's there right now. Tom's there. So there are a number of people on this call who are in the, ahead there of the gateway. And, you'll be there really soon. If you haven't written your gateway yet, you'll be there before you know it. So, and at this phase also, it can be helpful to be in conversation about, what your interests are. All right. So I'm going to get to a slide that I have. Very similar to Worry's slide. She writes about a problem statement. I talk about a practical problem. So what is the big issue that you're interested in? What brought you to grad school? what did you do before you came to grad school? You know, what were some of the things that like, what were the questions that like simmered around in your mind that where you thought like, I'd really like to know more about this because this is a real problem for my work or for my field or for my colleagues. What's the practical, concrete problem? You know, is it that students don't in general, students don't understand this thing? Or is it in general, teachers are having trouble teaching in this way? Or is it something else? You know, so it's important to just kind of zoom out from the narrow empirical research that you're looking at, which is all very important, and just like remind yourself, like when you're speaking to a broader audience, when you're in an elevator with somebody, when you're talking to your family, like what is the problem that you're working on that's like rooted in the real world, you know, before you get into the research. So the research problem is what don't we know about solving that problem? So if your problem is something like students don't understand how are having trouble doing addition by the time they finish second grade or something like that, or students have trouble understanding, you know, like, I don't know, the way that molecules are formed or something like that, then you know, then you know, based on standardized test scores or whatever kind of problem you're seeing in achievement, you know, like that's your practical problem. But the research problem is like what we don't understand about addressing that practical problem. Like we might understand, well, actually, there's a lot of research that tells us how first and second graders can get really good at addition. Here's the research. And so when laying out your practical problem, you describe all the ways that you can answer the practical problem. Sorry, when laying out the research problem, you describe all the ways that you can answer the practical problem with research, but then you're really carving out the space for what we don't understand yet. What don't we understand yet? And that's your research problem. And so then it leads naturally to future research, because what do we have left to understand? There's your dissertation topic, possibly, or maybe many dissertation topics in that final section. What don't we understand? So practical problem, what's the big issue in the world that I'm concerned about in education? Research problem, here's what we understand about how to address that practical problem. And that should include a theoretical framework. Like here's how I'm thinking about the problem. Here's the empirical research. And then and I have 3 to 5 subsections because that's what I like to see from my students. I like them to organize the research that's been done to answer the practical problem. So if it's like, trying to think of another example, if it's like teachers have difficulty leading discussions or something like that, and like students, the practical problem could be like students learn all sorts of things discussions help them, you know, this is the framing of the whole thing at the beginning. You know, discussions help students to process information. It helps students become more engaged in class. It has all these benefits, but teachers, you know, don't use discussion in class. Let's say that's the practical problem. Teachers aren't using it, which is unfortunately all too true. So what do we understand? So in my research, in my literature review, I will explore, you know, what we understand about how teachers can learn to lead good discussions. Okay. So then the whole research problem section is about the whole literature review / research problem section is, here's what we understand about how teachers learn to use discussion. So it could be through teacher education programs. That could be one subsection. It could be through professional development programs. That could be another subsection, or it could be about, I don't know, something else. It could be about, you know, teacher inquiry groups or something like that. So that you could have these 3 sections. Then your final thing is like, so we understand that they can learn about it in these 3 settings in certain ways. What we don't understand is, you know, what really happens in a professional development program in which they learn how to use discussion. So my future research, therefore, will be how do professional development programs help teachers learn discussion guiding strategies, something like that. So it all is coherent and serving the practical problem, which is that teachers don't know how to guide discussions well. And that's sort of rooted in this idea that's kind of foundational to the whole thing. So the background behind that is that it's actually valuable for students to have discussions happen in the classroom. So that's just a little example there. And so so right now, I think it's worthwhile to just zoom out for a second for you all. And I don't know if this goes along with the agenda, Dongyi, or if you're opposed to, do you have another idea? But my thought is that you could go into rooms here and talk about these questions. What is the real world educational problem that you're most concerned about? So this is like your practical problem. Have you figured that out yet? How many of you know what your practical problem is? Can I see a show of hands? Like, what is the thing that you're most concerned about? Do you know what it is already? Okay, if some of you know, that's great. Why don't you take a couple of minutes to share it with each other? And then the people who are not sure of what their practical problem is can really listen and maybe get some ideas of their own. And then what kind of evidence can help you document or highlight the importance of that problem? So the way I described it before with like teacher discussion, like the importance of it is students really benefit from discussion. And then a piece of evidence that would show it's a problem is that, only something like there's probably some data out there, and there's some old data that I know of that says only 10 to 20% of classroom time is spent in discussion, and I think it was actually lower than that, but that's like 20-year-old research. I don't know what the recent data say, but I could like look for practical data on that, right? So there's the real world educational problem. And then what kind of evidence do you need to actually document it? Because you might like experience things in your own life, but that's not enough to document the practical problem. Like my students have trouble with blah, 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 blah. That's not, I mean, that counts as anecdotal evidence, and that can raise like good questions for you as a practitioner. And you could do teacher research on that. But to like really make a case that this is really important, which is what I ask my students to do, probably your advisors will do this too. Like, why is this really a problem we need to be concerned about? Like, it's not, if it's just something you see in your classroom, all right, that's teacher research. That's important as a practitioner. When it comes to, in my view, like for to be dissertation worthy, it should be broader than just your classroom. So what kind of evidence would you need to really show that this is an important problem? All right, so I'm gonna stop my sharing here, and I'll put these questions in the chat, and let you go into groups. I don't think I have the. I don't know if I have the power to put you into groups. I might. I do actually. All right, I'm going to put you into groups of. I'll put you into 3 different groups.
Okay, I'll try because I didn't break it before. I'm trying. So let me see. We have like 8 students.
Well, I count 12. I count 13 people here.
But some of them like already passed, so we are here.
They can still share. They can still
Okay.
share.
Okay.
Yeah, then you can just like learn from each other.
Okay.
All right, so I'll let you go for it, and maybe we'll come back in like 5 minutes or 8 minutes or something like that. Okay.
Okay, like break.
You can all opt into rooms now.
Okay. Oh, you break it.
I can do it apparently.
Oh, okay, okay. So, I'm going to join this one. Hello, everyone. So, we are group 1, so we're going to discuss the first questions. So I just put the questions here. Do everyone see that? Yeah. Any thoughts about it? So, it's the real world education. Yeah, what is the real world educational problem that you are most concerned about? Anyone want to share?
Sure, I can share. I guess one of the problems that I think is kind of interesting is the idea of critical thinking and artificial intelligence. Does does AI kill critical thinking, right?
Yeah. Devin also is hosting a AI workshop in ETAP Docs. So yeah. How about you, Jessica? Jessica, what is your problem?
I think my problem is that I have too many that I want to focus on.
Mhm.
I'm very overly excited about a lot of different things. But I guess if I could narrow it down, just being a history teacher, I think what Brett was saying is accurate. We're not able to discuss difficult topics, and I think that that's kind of what has polarized our country today, politically, economically, socially. So I don't really know. I guess if discussion is key to that, maybe that's the avenue I go. But I'm still kind of up in the air. It's my first semester, but I do have enough credits to do the gateway, so I'll be doing it this summer. But I need to figure it out.
Yeah. Yes, maybe like we can start to review the articles, like find a very interesting point from to narrow it down. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. How about you, Nico, right?
Yeah. So I was actually supposed to do the gateway last year, but nobody ever like followed up with me on it. So pretty much the problem that I want to kind of tackle with this, I'm a high school math teacher, and following COVID, I've seen a significant decline in persistence for problem solving. So I really want to focus on something called representational mathematics. So things like drawings, diagrams, number lines, and how those can help or hinder a student's problem solving.
Okay. It's kind of like I work with my previous advisor in my master program. We work together about the how the manipulative effect of the manipulatives like on the mathematics. So it's very
yeah.
Yeah.
It's essentially a similar idea, but manipulatives is more geared towards like lower grades. And I found that there's not really a lot of research that's been conducted at the high school level, and things like manipulatives aren't as conventional for that age range. So
yeah, very interesting. Thank you. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name.
Yeah, I'm Nur Sultan. Like, I don't know why my second account is open. It's like it's opened by mistake. Yeah, I should correct it. Yeah,
So how can we pronounce your name?
I will write.
Every night? Okay.
I will write Nur Sultan.
So any thoughts?
Yeah, there are many problems. I think as I'm first year student, graduate student. So this year I started to engage into the artificial intelligence teaching and learning. So like now I'm curious about how artificial intelligence teaching and learning is assessed, what kind of measurement people use to assess artificial intelligence literacy during K-12. And this is one of my research. Previously, I did many researches, one very, I can mention one else that I have dealt with counterintuitive physics questions. Counterintuitive is you think like differently. As I'm physics teacher, I every time encounter with this problem, students think about some features of the nature differently than it happens. So here my question is can counterintuitive questions or counterintuitive approach reduce students' misunderstanding of physical concepts? This is like this is also a very good question, I think. Then, like, what I'm curious about, yeah, this kind of things. Yeah. Thank you for paying attention. Like maybe, like you have, if you have any thoughts about this, maybe Devan have something to tell about artificial intelligence. It would be really helpful for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is a tricky problem when thinking about artificial intelligence in a K-12 context, right? Like, we don't have a good way for thinking about the evolution of how people use the tools. I think one of the things that's still an open question is like, how does when you're learning to use AI and collaborating with AI, how does the way you talk with the AI change over time as you develop a more sophisticated understanding of what it is capable of doing and what it isn't capable of doing? And I think this is something that K-12 teachers aren't really taught a lot about. Like, what does learning with AI look like? How does a student's sophistication when chatting with the AI evolve from just doing simple like queries like what is the capital of the United States to actually engaging metacognitively with it, like helping them understand, okay, what do I know about physics? What do I know about like classical mechanics? Where does my understanding start to fade maybe with doing, I don't know, two-dimensional projectile motion? And how can I use the AI to help tease out potential misunderstandings and misconceptions? I think the gradient between just asking the AI to answer like simple questions to actually asking it questions that help you understand the depth of your knowledge is like a very large gradient that isn't understood well, and I think is open to a lot more exploration within specific domains.
Okay.
Just
Thank
like
you.
sorry, just a concept come to my mind. It's like a new concept, like a AI literacy.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, you can create
point.
it. Yeah, you can define.
Right. Yeah.
It's like a difference compared to the media literacy, digital literacy, AI literacy, maybe the kind of
Right.
for the teachers. Yeah, very interesting. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I take it as a good thing that you came back, that nobody came back early. And those must have been pretty good discussions. Would anybody like to share something that they learned from listening to others speak about their own practical problems, or from sharing their own perspectives and verbalizing them?
In our group, we raised an important question, and thank you, Chriselle, for your input on this. We talked about the difficulty of making contact with school districts if you're researching K through 12 world, because it's almost like you have to be actively involved in the school district to fully get, get in contact with them and get approved for research and et cetera, et cetera. But at the same time, there's not always, if you are working there as a teacher, then how do you, step aside and conduct the research? So that's a complicated issue.
Yes, recruitment is actually, yes, absolutely a challenge for sure. Anything else anything somebody learned about a practical challenge that you're concerned about in education? Like what do you want to learn about topically through your dissertation?
Yeah, when in our group, Nursultan and I were talking about a shared interest in AI. And one of the things that we were talking about was this idea of like, what does critical thinking look like in the age of AI? This is a very popular question that's been circulating around higher ed and also in K-12. And one aspect of that problem is like, what does the joint reasoning look like that happens between the interlocutors, right? The student and the AI, particularly in the K-12 space, right? Because you have multiple levels of joint reasoning going on. Joint reasoning going on between the students in each grade level. And it's pretty well established what joint reasoning looks like across these different grade levels in a social context between the students. And even in some cases between the student and teacher. But what's less well understood is what that reasoning looks like between a student and the AI. And that's not really even all that well understood when we're talking about adult learners and what like the taxonomy of and evolution of joint reasoning looks like across each domain.
Excellent question. Sometimes I think so much can come from just watching what people do. You know, what are people doing in there? Like it makes, you know,
Right.
what am I doing? You know, yeah, like I study civic engagement and like crossing political boundaries and crossing like other how do people learn how to cross political boundaries and cross like other types of boundaries, ethnicity, race, stuff like that. I've been studying that recently. That's not like my primary area. But then I think like, well, you can look at it academically, but then you can look at yourself as sort of a case study. And especially when there's so little that's known about it, and it's such a cutting edge kind of question. Like, how am I interacting with this thing? And how are we interacting with this thing that we're using right now? I just wrote a research proposal that involves using a lot of Zoom. And some of my senior colleagues are like, why would you want to do that? Why would you want to study how students interact on Zoom? But it's like, I feel like, well, this is a tool that we're using all the time right now. And so we kind of need to understand it better. But I think like, there's a certain like tension between like, I'm annoyed by AI. Like I'm like scared of AI and like, but it's here. How are we actually dealing with it? How are we actually going to deal with it? And so when it's that new and it's that cutting edge, it's interesting to just like watch what people do. Like, what if we like used you could use all of your Zoom classes as like case studies, in like how people interact on Zoom, or like a Zoom workshop, for example. Like, how are those being run? Anyway, I'm getting a little off topic here, but I guess my point is that I think just like simple observation, and this, now you talk to your advisor about this, but it's a very interesting practical problem, and it sounds very cutting edge and very interesting. And sometimes it can just, you can get some of your initial data just from watching, like there's some of the best research in media literacy is from like watching what fact checkers do. And that's how we got this whole concept of lateral reading. Like that's what fact checkers do. They open up a new browser window and examine the source of what they were just reading. And now like we're teaching lateral reading to like lots and lots of high schoolers because we just watched people at Stanford, researchers watch what fact checkers do. Okay. Anyway, another practical problem that came up in your group. Let's hear from somebody else. Why are you here? Why are you studying education? Go ahead, Maria. You unmuted for a second.
Yeah, I don't want to. I don't want to hijack it, but my big question is, what if my issue that I want to study is very, very niche, and there's probably laterally related studies. There's definitely laterally related studies on this topic, but not quite on this topic. So like doing a literature review is difficult because of that.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. What is the question?
The experiences of English language learners studying world languages in high school.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I get that that's niche, but I think that there are a lot of take the big concepts there. This makes me think of what you'll probably take 773 next semester.
Yes.
Maybe next year. A big part of that is like figuring out how to use search engines, and like you have to think about what the concepts are. And there's a big concept there of ELLs, and there's a big concept of world history, right? And then within each of those, there are different categories. But like, how do people learn world history? So you can first look at that, and then you can look at how ELLs learn. And like, and is it they're learning? Are you interested in ELL
World language.
learning in general?
World languages, because the thing is, they are very underrepresented in world language classes.
How they will learn world languages. Sorry, I misheard you.
Yeah. So, and that arguably could be like a really useful class for them, even psychologically. But
I think that's an awesome question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, we'll just think about, then I just break it down into those pieces. Especially look at world language learning, research in that. Because if that's the thing that you're interested in, like the process you're interested in, then you're just interested in like the population, how this, it's just a question of.
I have to mainly look at like European studies. There it's a lot more studied of like how multilinguals study a new language, basically. Yeah.
All right. Well, it's something to ask your advisor about. I'd be in conversation with your advisor about it, but I would think of like, how do you break it down into like the big ideas there? What is the thing that you want people to figure out how to do? And then you figure out what we know about how people do that.
Thank you.
And when it comes to the subpopulation, then if that's totally unique, then great. Then you have like something that's totally unique. And hopefully you'll have, I guess the other question I ask my advisees is it unique and important? Like, can you convince people that it really matters? Are there enough people that are going to be affected, that are going to benefit from your research, that it's like makes it like worth use? And it could just be that you're super passionate about it. But I think there's obviously a big population of people who who would relate to that topic and who would benefit from more understanding of it. All right, other practical problems. Gina, what's your practical problem?
I already passed my gateway.
I know, but tell everybody, since you're so advanced, what is the practical problem you're concerned about?
Oh, so I'm interested to learn how ELs and non-ELs interact with each other and learn in classroom. Yeah. I don't know.
Well, I think the practical problem, if you zoom out like that's like the process that you're studying. The big practical problem there is that we have tons of ELs, right? Tons of ELs, like learning in contexts that are like multilingual. So, I mean, that's just, it's not, the problem is that, ELs could be learning better than they are, just like anybody can be learning anything better. So the problem, I mean, I'd say that's what I mean by a practical problem. There are like so many millions of people that are ELs. We want them to thrive. We want them to succeed. We want them to learn English. And what's one way that, but we don't understand completely, but and then they're in these contexts with people who speak very like that are native speakers. So how can what we don't understand, the research problem here is like, we don't really understand how they could be benefiting from each other in their learning, right? Isn't that the research problem? Yeah. Okay. I know this because I am, I went to the pilot study. I was on the committee. So, all right. So why don't we move on to another, what about you, Jess? What practical problem surfaced for you? Was it a lot of different practical problems?
Correct. So you know me, you're my advisor, and that's exactly what I said. I said I have so many interests that it's hard to narrow it down. So
a typical problem, a very common problem for new doc students. Yes. Including me. When I was a doc student. Yes, absolutely.
I just turned in a qualitative research proposal about soft skills, but I don't think that that's what I want to focus on, but certainly something more social studies aligned. I'm really interested in literacy. There's a number of different pathways that I want to go down. So figure it out. And that's basically what I told my group.
Yeah. And in order to write a gateway, it's really helpful to figure out the thing that you really want to focus on, because it's supposed to be narrow and you're supposed to show your scholarly skills there. So you kind of have to name your problem. What about you, Chriselle? Have you figured out your practical problem? Good to see you, by the way. It's been a long time. And I put you on the spot right there as soon as you turned on your camera. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. You're muted, but Tom, what about you? What's your practical problem?
Right now, I've got a new one, which is with the increase of technology, there's lots of places where learners can have conversations with each other, whether it's face-to-face or in online learning platforms. This makes it difficult for teachers to track conversations that are taking place in different locations. So the practical problem is, how can we help teachers keep track of conversations that are taking place in different locations among students and working in small groups when they're working face-to-face and in online platforms like Knowledge Forum, but a more familiar one might be Brightspace or Blackboard. And then the question is focusing on how AI might be able to help be a tool to use to track these kind of conversations if you input transcripts or records of the conversations taking place. So the practical problem for the researchers, that kind of like a methods focus, is what kind of prompts can help teachers provide the context within the AI system to help teachers have more targeted access to what's going on, because there's a lot of information.
Sorry. Can I cut in for 1 sec here? I think the practical problem is that a lot of teachers don't know what's going on in these small group conversations.
Yeah,
and so that limits their ability to be effective teachers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. That's the practical problem. And you're jumping to what a solution might be.
Yeah. So that's what I'm looking to test. Yeah.
I think Haysal would have some good insights on that.
Yeah.
Have you talked to Haysal?
No, but I've been talking to Devin. Devin's an expert too, so I've been talking to him.
Okay.
I'll talk to Haysal. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think that's really cool. That's really cool. That could be an extremely useful tool in the modern age, for sure. Yeah, if you can come up with that one. There might be things like that already, though. That's what I think Haysal might know about, because I think there might be some things that exist. It depends, because sometimes when students are doing things and it's all typed in, then AI can sort of like read it really fast and send prompts. But I don't know if it can listen well enough to send prompts and kind of summarize things for teachers quite yet.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about the practical problem, and I think why don't we just pause for like a minute and have you all like write down right now what the big problem is that it doesn't have to be a commitment. This isn't a commitment. Okay. But try to write 1 or 2 sentences, summarize in 1 or 2 sentences. If you met somebody in line at a coffee shop or in an elevator at a conference, and they said, why are you studying? Like, what do you want to learn about in education? What problem in society are you concerned about? How would you answer that question? What problem in education are you concerned about? What problem are you concerned about? Okay, try to do 2 sentences. What problem that students or teachers deal with? Or that affects students and teachers are you concerned about?
Professor, you are muted.
Thank you. We only have about, 8 minutes left. So I'd like you to go into breakout rooms for another 3 minutes just to think about what kind of research might help you understand the ways to address your practical problem. What research would help you figure out ways to understand your practical problem? Okay, so that question is in the chat. What research areas or subcategories might help you understand the practical problem, the thing that you're concerned about? Just like there was a question earlier, I think she left, but she had this how ELs learn like world languages. So she could look at the category of how people learn about world languages, and she can think about how ELs learn and maybe there are any barriers they might face in school or anything like that. So try to think about like what big concepts are in your practical problem, and then how you would explore those. All right, so I'm opening up the rooms.
What did you say?
You just type the questions here. What research area might help you understand ways to address your practical problem? I can share first. My current research focus on how online language teacher promote parental involvement. This is actually from one of my advisors' research. We collect data from the ELA teachers to see how they teach. Oh, only have 3 minutes. I get it. Okay, so I think for me, I conduct the research like a teacher education, teacher development, and the concept of interactions. So I'm going to see how teacher promote teacher, student, and parents interactions in online settings. Yeah. How about you guys?
Yeah, I'm not really like entirely sure, I guess, about all the pieces that I think would help or that would help. But I think for me in particular, looking at some of the data that's already been conducted about student like persistence with problem solving. And there's also been a ton of research conducted about my focus topic at the elementary level. Okay. So I think kind of getting a foundational understanding of that prior lit would help me kind of guide my research.
Yeah. So the elementary is kind of like the background, right? And
yeah.
the problem solving could be like a conceptual framework.
So yeah, I'm thinking constructivism as like my theoretical framework to kind of situate it in, but yeah, I feel like a lot of it is kind of influenced by COVID. Like from my perspective, when I taught through COVID, my students were not writing anything down, right? They were on a computer the whole time. They weren't using paper or pencil. And then when we went back to school, it was kind of like teaching them how to use those skills again. So teaching them how to write a problem out, how to create a diagram. It's like they started from scratch. And I don't know how much literature there really is out there about that specific issue that we've been encountering kind of collectively, all the math teachers that I know following COVID.
Yeah, I'm also very interested in topic because one of current. Just get back.
Hi, everybody. So we only have until 7:30. Is that right, Dongyi? That's how long you scheduled this for?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I'm going to share with you. All right. How many people are getting something out of these small group discussions? Are you learning from each other? Is it valuable? Okay. So I encourage you to continue those conversations, just set it up informally. It could be coffee over Zoom, or like dinner over Zoom. Just have a conversation with someone that you meet in class and just talk about where you are with your gateway, anything you're struggling with. It's totally cool. It's grad school is and learning a scholarship in general is a process. It's not a straight line. All right. So I'm going to share with you. Do you see something that says exploring if belonging matters? Do you see that? Okay. This is an example of a gateway. All right. And it says exploring if belonging matters in developmental education. So this student was concerned based on her own experiences in her job, concerned about developmental education, which is when students come to college and they are not quite ready for college. And there's an increasingly large number of people who get accepted to college, but they're not ready for like quote college level work. So they do some courses that kind of help them to become ready for college level work. And so the question is like, so she's interested in belonging. It does a sense of belonging. Because you might feel like, well, I barely got into college. I'm not sure if I belong, so what about creating a sense of belonging in the classroom? If, especially if you might feel like, maybe this isn't the right place for me. Maybe I should, so she's interested in, how students can belong. Does that matter? Okay, so that's the practical problem here. And she lays out some interesting stats here. This is the practical problem at the beginning. It's just like a page and a half. Okay, this is her gateway. She writes like about 40% of all first year students across institution types in the US were placed into and eventually took developmental education courses. So by like putting out there, it's not just her own personal experiences, but there are a lot of students. This affects a lot of people, right? That's what I'm talking about when it comes to like amplifying the practical problem. She has seen this in her job, but she actually found that, in this year, 2011 to 2012, about 40% of all first year students across institution types in the US were placed into and eventually took developmental education courses. And then she goes on in another school year recently, academic year, 60% of first year community college students took one or more developmental education courses within 3 years. So it's a very normal thing. Like this is a really big issue she's getting at. Okay. And then she gets at, they don't always do very well and all of that. So that's like the practical problem. We have all these students who are going to college and then not making it. And that's very unfortunate. They're spending money. They want to learn. They want to learn. They want to succeed in higher ed, but they're not able to. So then she gets into what we know about how to address that issue and what are the different concepts in her question. So in order to examine if classroom community can contribute to increased success in developmental education, below I explore each component: developmental education, success, and community in the classroom. So each of these three things: what is success? How are we thinking about success? What is developmental education itself? Because not everybody knows. I mean, I was not clear on it. This is my student. But she was interested in motivation, which is one of my little subfields. So so she's working with me. And then community in the classroom. So then she goes into the history of developmental education and tells all about that. And then defining developmental education, what exactly is it? And then a sense of belonging. What did I do here? Sense of belonging. She defines that, prior scholars have found that the need to belong is a human drive with two main features: meaningful positive interactions with others and a perception of having a future relationship with those same people. So she goes into definitions of it and then the effects of it. And then what we can do to foster it: involvement as a pathway to belonging, interaction as a pathway to belonging, and motivation, self-efficacy, and task value in relation to belonging. So she's just sort of connecting these concepts. And then pedagogical choices for increasing belonging. And then that's just one little paragraph here. But that's actually a really, really important paragraph, because she's really building on that when it comes to the future directions, because she really wants to study like how you can actually build a sense of belonging. So something that she had to do in the next phase of her scholarship, which I think she's still working on, is in developing her pilot study, is really digging into this paragraph right here, all these studies right here. Pedagogical choices, what do we do pedagogically to support belonging? But she does lay out, future directions for research. So just to summarize and zoom out again, the practical problem is just like one page, one or two pages. Then the research problem breaks down like how to understand what that practical problem is, the history of it, of that, defining the concept, and then defining all the key terms, and then how we actually have a positive, what we understand about addressing the practical problem of supporting sense of belonging. And then what do we still have left to know? We really don't understand how to do it in developmental education classrooms. So that carves a path for her future work. So there's an example. Now it takes a lot of work to get to this point, but I think you are all perfectly capable of getting to this point. And sometimes, not every gateway looks the same. It's 12 pages, and not everything is structured like this, but this is a pretty reasonable and helpful way of structuring it, because it forces you to really identify what you care about, and then figure out how research can tell us how to address what you care about, and then what it does, and then you kind of say what research doesn't say yet, which is your spot for what the lane you can jump into for your dissertation. Question, Chriselle.
We're in the example that you just showed us, where that student broke down, or would that essentially be like his or her literature review in terms of their problem?
Yeah. There's a big literature review right in the middle of it. Yeah. There's like a 10-page literature review that basically explores, what the concepts are, just defining what developmental education is, what belonging is, and then how we support, what research suggests about supporting belonging in the developmental education classroom. So sometimes before you can get to like what research tells us about how to address the practical problem, you actually have to define what the terms are. Like in the earlier, like what exactly is critical thinking, for example, Devin, you were talking about critical thinking, but like that's like kind of an elusive term. I deal with, one of my key terms is civic engagement. Well, what is that exactly? And that's sort of, you could say it's in the eye of the beholder, but as a scholar, as a researcher, someone who's trying to actually measure something and study something, you actually do need to define it. And that's how you're going to figure out how to get empirical evidence related to it.
And then I saw in terms of the gateway, we need to include possibilities for future research, and then conclude.
Yes.
And then draw a conclusion.
The conclusion is sort of at the beginning of the future direction section, like the future. That's where I would like to see a conclusion is kind of hard at this point. What I'd like to see is like a summary of, in general,
I meant like wrapping up everything, like kind of tying everything together.
Yeah, I think you can tie everything together that came earlier, like at the beginning of the future direction section. It makes sense. Oh yeah, she does have a conclusion there. I mean, I don't always see that. A lot of people aren't, you only have 12 pages. So, 1 or 2 sentences to sort of wrap it up would be fine. This doesn't need to be a neat and tidy, like, I don't know. It should be well written. So the conclusion is fine, but we really are looking at the end for some like concrete directions that you want to go, like some concrete questions, not something vague. It should be like, I would like to explore this question in a college classroom, or I would like to explore this in a middle school science classroom, like something that really is like, there's like a clear vision. Even if you're not going to do it, you're not committing to it, but it's sort of like a thought exercise, like, because that's part of, getting ready to do your dissertation, thinking about like possibilities of how you would really analyze something and
Is it
learn
possible
about
for
it.
to be more than 12 pages?
I've definitely seen them go over. I don't think anybody's going to send it back to you if it's like 12 and a half or 13, but people might be the reviewers might be a little annoyed if it's, 20 or 16, something like that. I would say, try to be concise. That is one of the academic writing skills to try to do, and if you find yourself writing really long and it is still super academic and it's exactly what you would see in an academic article, well, save some of that for your literature review for your pilot study or dissertation. You don't have to tell everything right here.
Okay.
All right. I know there were some other questions that were sent to me in advance. I don't know if I answered a lot of them. I should probably go in a couple minutes, but I'm happy to answer a couple more questions if there's anything that's lingering.
Kim, so we are almost finished, right? So thank you for everyone for sharing your very like thoughtful ideas tonight. And also especially thankful Dr. Levy. Shall we take a group photo in Zoom? So we're going to share that in our ETAP Docs social media. Is that okay for everyone? Okay.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
I guess if you're not okay, you can always, stop your video.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So, and if you have any like further questions and need any support, like we mentioned, like a peer collaboration or conversation, please feel free to email Dr. Levy or ETAP Docs. We are always going to support and help each other. So thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Oh, I'm going to take the
So
photo.
much.
Sorry.
Have a great night.
What?
Tom, did you want to say something, Tom?
Yeah.
I was going to take the photo. That was my job. I missed my chance. Oh, well.
Oh, okay. Well, you can still do it. You still have a
You
bunch
still
of
have
us
people
here.
here. You still have people here. I'll say.
Yeah. Okay. Bye, all. Great. Because I wanted to know if people are smiling, but then I missed my chance. Okay, no problem. Thanks very much.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.